Welcome, Activation Nation. We are thrilled to be here. I especially am excited about our guest today and talking with Kira North and Megan Jones. And many of you have had the special privilege of being able to get to know them and hear from them through Activate 90. And if you haven't, make sure you go and listen to the recordings because you're going to want to. They are nutrition coaches, having more than a decade of experience between the two of them, and love talking to all of you because of the feeling of being able to really relate and the correlations between what they do and what you are all out in the field doing. And so it's really fun to have them here. And Kira and Megan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yay, we're excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of things today. But some of the biggest things that we want to talk about are, how do we keep clients motivated when they're losing steam? And I know that all of our LifeVantage field has felt that or understands what that feels like of trying to really keep people motivated. How do I re-engage someone? How do I keep somebody feeling positive and motivated when they're feeling discouraged and they're having a bad week and they're, just keeping consistency going. And that, applies to all aspects of life. And our health and nutrition and exercise is a huge part of the challenges of being consistent, along with business, right? I feel like it really touches on almost every aspect of life. It's super challenging to stay consistent. So those are some of the things that we're going to kind of touch a little bit on today. But tell me, you guys, what is one thing that you feel like is really helpful as someone is doing that? So I'm a consultant. I am really trying to teach health and wellness to my team and help them to stay as healthy as possible. What are some just key things that you feel like are really important to be able to stay consistent?
I'll go first. So the biggest thing I see a lot off the top of my head is a lot of times when people dive into their health journey, they want everything to be perfect. They want their day to be perfect. They're doing everything right from the get-go. But we just know, like most of our clients are moms. They have jobs. They're busy. They live in the car. Their weekends are jam-packed full of sports. How do we make this work with the simple things we're asking our clients to do, but in the context of life? And so a lot of times we'll look at how do we be comfortable living in this gray area? Not perfect. There are days we're going to absolutely crush it, have a great day, do all the things. But what do the days look like when, hey, we had clients on the East Coast that were iced in their homes last week? They weren't able to move like they normally do. They weren't able to go to their grocery store like they normally do. But it's like, how do they show up on those days? Even though on paper it doesn't look exactly perfect, there's still the capacity to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say with that one, what resonates for me is Megan and I are both clients ourselves, right? Like I am Megan's client. Megan knows what my last couple of months, let alone last few years I've been working with her, look like. And I think it's recognizing that motivation comes after action. We often think motivation comes beforehand, but knowing that I'm also a client, I know what it's like to have an off day. So I automatically are letting my people know that humanism and being a human being and having that human experience is a huge part of that sustainability, right? So if you're expecting things to be something that doesn't fit your reality, that's where that motivation typically wavers versus allowing yourself and your context to shift when it needs to, right? The next best choice is always going to serve you better than, to Megan's point, that ideal scenario, because there's going to be things that life is throwing at you. But I don't expect that from my people, which means I can't expect it from myself. So I'm keeping those expectations realistic, but allowing that room for enough to be enough. And that often serves people a lot better than this all or nothing kind of mindset.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of times we get, I love that you said that, Kira, recognizing enough is enough. And sometimes when we get frustrated, at least I feel like this, I hear many people talk about this, when we get frustrated with not staying consistent, and like you said, Megan, having those days that just don't go well for whatever reason it might be. Rather, it's, life just throws things at you, schedule wise, or like you said, can't get out of the house, whatever that looks like, it happens. And when we get in that mindset of feeling like, oh, I'm not doing enough, that just sends us on a downward spiral. So I love that you said that, like recognizing and telling ourselves sometimes enough is enough, and it's okay to stay positive even if a day doesn't look or go like we want it to, or like the trajectory that we're trying to stay on. It's still okay. And tomorrow's a new day, and just trying to stay consistent. So I love that idea of keep staying motivated and staying positive, and it helps us stay on a positive trajectory.
Yeah,
in the right.
easier said than done.
I also think it's okay to recognize that you're not always going to be motivated, right? You're not always going to be positive. I've had crap days. I've had days where I haven't felt motivated. And I think it's allowing yourself to not always have this grind or this push forward or this diluted version of your reality, right? Or an unrealistic component to that one. And I think allowing yourself that room creates more space for that nuance. Then, that ideal always being met also becomes unrealistic, because then the day has to be the exact same every single day, right? For that to be sustainable. And that's not realistic at all.
Well, and I think it creates a lot of, and we do this, we create a lot of pressure on ourselves, and we put a ton of pressure on ourselves. And so finding that balance, how do you guys, as you're working with clients or you're talking to people, how do you help them to create accountability without the pressure and without the, constant self-doubt? What is kind of your guys' method or belief with that?
I think a lot comes just through experience and just actually trusting yourself in this process. Most people want to quit when they have a bad day. Where I mean, we've been at this for 10 years, and we have had bad days. We've had days where we've doubted ourselves, doubted what we're doing. That self sabotage can be such a big part of it. Where it's like, but now I look back and I'm like, those bad days, I got through every single one, and I'm still moving forward. So we just have to know there is the good and the bad. And that's not stalling process. I think mentally it's more challenging than anything.
Yeah. And I think slowing down too, right? So I think we're really good at creating to-do lists, especially mental ones. So recognizing I had this problem years ago where I was trying to save the world every single day, right? Which is not really, I wasn't waking up being like, I'm going to save it, but everything I was doing had equal importance. And that's also not helpful for that pressure. So recognizing what is important, what's in alignment with how you want the day to go. I think we think about children or like teaching when we're younger. There's a level of like reminders or things that you're not used to doing regularly, and giving yourself, I have a whiteboard where I remind myself certain things, like today you're going to focus on these things, everything else around that doesn't. And it sounds silly to have visuals or those lists for ourselves, but I mean, you guys have the tracking app to begin with to help support keeping the main things the main things. It allows for you to kind of put your blinders on a little bit. But that pace is a big one. We often have our clients find ways of slowing down in your day. Tracking is a big one. A lot of people think they don't have time for tracking, when in reality, even if you're not hitting your numbers, it physically requires you to slow down and check in on yourself. So we kind of remind our clients specifically what you're doing helps support being the person that you want to be, not perfectly to Megan's point what we're talking about, but there's intentionality around it. So if you're making a choice that is slowing in that pace and intentional, it's usually going to serve you a lot better than doing it, the best of your ability every single time.
And I think kind of bouncing off of Kira, like when people find that the simple things become the hardest things, there's usually a balance shift that is very off. So it's like, all right, what does work life look like? What does home life look like? What are other areas that we do need to set better boundaries with? Because all these things that we are asking, our clients and like LifeVantage people to do is just to support them in everyday life. But I do see like someone's going through a divorce, they're not thinking, hey, I should take care of my nutrition and take my supplements. So it's kind of also knowing your people and what they're going through of like, all right, you're in a different situation. We're going to make things in a way a lot simpler, free up some of that mental real estate so we can still move forward. But it's like, yeah, people are going through heavy things, and it's usually the easy things, simple things that go out the window.
Yeah.
Well, and that kind of leads me into like, as you're working with clients, because this is a big thing, it applies so much to their business also, leadership. And we're talking about, taking accountability or creating, like, I love that you guys are talking about, having visuals and creating space for these things that we know are important, but sometimes it just is really hard to make time for, depending on our personal situations. And so, how do you help your clients take ownership? Like, as you guys are teaching them, you're kind of the leader. How are you helping them take ownership for their own health and wellness? And this could, like I said, be related to business, like taking ownership of their own business, and helping them without making them feel like you're micromanaging them. So kind of giving them the ownership, but also the guidance at the same time.
So what we like to do a lot is, first off, we lead from example, right? We lead from the front. And that's one of the reasons why Megan and I both have coaches, because we believe in the value of having a coach ourselves. So we can't tell our clients, hey, it's important for you to have a coach. We believe in having a coach. And then we're like, we don't have one. So we like to lead from our personal experience with our own lives. Another one is we like to do micro and macro, right? So we have big picture of what we're aiming to focus on, long game. Short game is this. So for example, I've gone through a divorce with coaching with Megan. Megan has given me some weeks of being like, normally I want you to track your food, Kira. This week is not on your docket. So what I want you to do is pay attention to 3 meals a day with good food quality. That helps remove the bigger picture feeling really heavy while focusing on a small action step that I can do in those 3 days, those 7 days. So I'm able to kind of have a visual of what this current moment feels like, while also being reminded of what that bigger one does and how this small moment feeds into that long term. So I don't have to lose track of one or the other, but I have specific moments that I can be paying attention to while someone's holding me accountable to also the person I'm working at being in that mess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that I love that visual that you gave, or that example, because like you said, Kara, that takes the pressure off of you of being able to say, okay, I can handle that much. And then Megan kind of holds on to the rest of it and is able to re-implement maybe some things as she feels like you're able to handle it. But it takes that huge pressure and big picture off of you for a minute, where you can just focus on the small things, the micro, like you said.
Yeah. Because we want to try to control everything, right? So
Sure.
we're constantly trying to control. So if you have somebody that's helping support, holding them accountable, they also know where it makes sense to have control, and where they're also like, hey, I have this. So Megan's kind of like, hey, let me have that back. That one's for me. I'm going to do that one. And she's also be like, this one's for you. So we kind of are also really good at making sure people know what's theirs and what's not theirs. And there's a level of doing it lovingly, right? But we also remind our clients that we're on their side, right? The reason that they're here and they're working with me is because they're working on building trust with themselves. But I have no other goal other than theirs, right?
Right.
There's no other reason that I'm here for that, which helps support them recognizing, hey, this person's here to help me, not fight me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Megan, what about you? How do you help give ownership? I mean, Kara gave a great example of how you've actually done it. Done it in real life, in a real situation. Any other kind of thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot with coaching, we talk about like this biofeedback, how we feel, because on paper, it looks like I got a checklist. I only have to do a checklist. And I think that sometimes detaches the human from the experience. And so I kind of want to focus sometimes of like, yeah, there's this checklist. We love the checklist. Feels good putting little gold stars by every single thing. But then we're kind of like, well, we need to kind of touch base of like, how am I actually feeling? Am I having good sleep? Is digestion going well? Is my stress being managed? And kind of like with Kira's experience of like, we were just holding on to like the basic foundation versus like, hey, we got to get your cardio in and lift weights. It's like, we're going to make those adjustments, not just because we're not hitting the check marks, but because of how that person is feeling. So I think it's just having both on hand. And this is why, like you do an online kind of, tracking thing, it's like there's no human experience with it if you're not checking in on your people. And so it's nice to, say, hey, I know it was a tough week, but I'm super proud of you. You hit steps 3 days this week where normally you wouldn't. So I think it's celebrating everyone's lower moments when they are not doing everything perfect, but it's
Yeah.
like we're still making such great traction moving forward.
Yeah. And it sounds to me like too, there is a real level of trust there also. So you've really like gained the trust of the people that you are coaching and that you're leading. And that's such a huge part of the business side of it too, is
Yeah.
those people in your team, you've got to gain their trust and then know what they're going through, having those check-ins with them, talking to them about what's happening, how they're doing, answering questions. It gives you an idea of, like you said, then you know where that person's at and can adjust and make things a little bit personalized and humanize it for them and go, okay, this isn't going to work this week. Let's do this. And I love the checklist too. I'm a checklist gal, 100%.
We all are. We love those
Yeah,
lists.
I love a checklist. Give me a spreadsheet, a checklist all day, but it just doesn't always work.
Yeah.
And being flexible as a leader and being willing to adjust for that person that you're teaching or helping out. So I'm sure that, when you're coaching, it always goes perfectly, right? And every client just follows exactly what you say. They're laughing in
Which
case.
clients are you talking about?
Oh
Right.
boy.
Obviously, I'm being facetious with that. But when you have a client that have listened to, you've worked on building that trust a little bit, and they are just saying, I've tried everything before. I've done that. I've tried this. It doesn't work. I don't have time. Whatever it might be, they kind of push back. How do you help them to switch, flip that switch a little bit, flip that mindset of nothing works for me. I can't do this. How do you help them flip over to a little bit of a more positive mindset?
I think
That's
people need to realize too, it's like there's no finish line because people have a goal. Like, say, I want to lose 50 pounds. And I'm like, great, I love that goal. But it's like, it's the how. Like, how are we going to do it? What are the little tiny things we're doing? And I think people just want a timeline. And what happens is, anytime they start something new, that dopamine hits there, they're excited, they're motivated. But what happens where you're not seeing results in 2 weeks and you think this isn't working? So we like to give clients, like, you need to spend some time just being in this space versus jumping around from one thing to the next to the next. And it is kind of just these little subtle adjustments that we do to help keep them on that path. There are times, I think we've all been there, where this isn't working for me. I just want to jump ship, try something else. And usually it's like probably in the next week or so, things would have started changing.
Yeah. So giving, like, setting up from the beginning really like realistic expectations.
Yeah, we try to like map out if they're in it for at least a year. I'm like, this is what your year is going to look like. And this is what I expect at this month, at this month, at this month.
And we like to remind clients of that, right? Because I love to be reminded, hey, you have a savings goal. I do this week, I do this month. Because when you're not used to doing it on like your autopilot, depending on where that is, you have to be reminded what that looks like regularly. And I think reminding people, to make its point earlier, like, we're celebrating what they're doing, reminding them of where we're going and how we're going to continue getting there, like continuing to repeat yourself. Research has also shown too that people don't need more positive thinking. They just need less negative thinking, right? So instead of saying you have to be positive, just try to say, can we reframe it, right? Or ask more. We like to ask more like interviewing kind of questions of like, what would that look like? What are you struggling with the most? Because a lot of times what's happening inside of our heads, right? The story sounds very different when you say it out loud. So you can almost kind of recognize the reauthoring and the rewriting of that a little bit just from that conversation piece. But we've been kind of touching on based on a lot of different moments of that leadership. We're not very different than our clients, right? We know what it's like to be in those situations where we haven't felt like anything is working or like our luck is not going the way we want it to. What do we do ourselves in those moments? What works? we're probably not different than a lot of those clients itself. Not everyone's different, but again, it's kind of just getting to know that connection component and just asking some questions and also being like, what do you need? What would make this day better for you? What would make you feel like are making progress? Because a lot of times people have an idea in their head of like, I'm not getting results. And it's like, well, let's talk about it. Are you really not getting results? Or does it feel like that in this moment because you had an argument with your sister, or, your mom, has a diagnosis of something and it's kind of bleeding in different areas. So you can kind of sift through that a little differently just from that conversation piece a little bit.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up that you talk about the story that we tell ourselves and being able to rewrite that story. And I think that's such an empowering idea and an empowering acknowledgement for so many people, myself included, of recognizing I can rewrite that story that I'm telling, the story that I'm creating for myself. I have the capability of rewriting that and changing that a little bit. Like that's a very empowering thing, and I think for a lot of people. So I love that.
Yes.
Okay, well, how do you keep? You Megan, you kind of hit on this a little bit, where you said you're talking about the long game. You really try to give people the long-term picture rather than these quick fixes that we all know don't work, whether it's health-wise, whether it's in business, whatever that is. It's just not how things work. But so how do you help clients kind of switch that mindset? Like, what are some tips that you give them to think about this more of a long term than these short term fixes? And also so we're trying to create a long term mindset, but also how do you keep them motivated throughout going? Because as we know, if we don't have little carrots along the way, it's really easy to fall off, and it's really hard to keep moving.
Yeah. I think when education is so big with our clients, like Kira said, we're always explaining this is where we're at, this is what we're doing. And I think that just relieves a lot of pressure on themselves, because I think, as especially women, we're so driven by the scale going down, by our clothes fitting a certain way. And it's like there are periods of time where we're really just focused on health, on building muscle, on getting stronger, on being the healthiest version of ourselves, before it's always about the scale, the scale, the scale. Because how we map it out with our clients, like there are times where we're really just focused on them feeling good, their hormones are happy, they're feeling the best they've ever felt. That doesn't mean their body is not changing, but it's just we want to make sure we're doing this in a way where we're not overstressing the body and making them feel like, I've had clients come where they've been hardly eating for years on end and have never realized, hey, this is what I should truly have been doing. I think the wins they see just in that alone are incredible, because they feel better. We have women getting their cycles back after being missing for months. And so it's kind of just not saying, hey, we're doing this just for aesthetics, for how you look. There's so many other reasons. And that's where I think you pull in that education piece. And we pull in like, hey, these are supplements that are going to support this. These are things for your lifestyle that are going to support this. Because if aesthetics and the scale, if that's the only thing you are focused on, you are going to get completely frustrated, because my scale, it's going to fluctuate. Everyone's will. And I think, I think the number of texts, Kira can affirm this, with clients of the scale goes up and they're like, what happened? Why is the scale up? And I was like, well, what did you eat last night? And they're like, I ate sushi. I had a lot of soy sauce. And I'm like, well, that right there. And so it's just kind of reiterating, like, we're normal. This happens to me. It's going to happen to you. And I think the trust they put in you in that education and just being comfortable of like, all right, this is what this means, versus the scales up and it means I'm failing.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. Carrie, any tips that you have on helping people to stay motivated with that and keeping that long-term vision?
So one thing that I like to do with my clients, especially all the things that Megan said, right? We have awareness, education, desire, application is typically what we go through with our clients for just some feedback. I also like to add humor personally. Like I get super aggressive with my humor, but I'm kind of like, oh, well, your kid's not doing well with potty training. Just forget it. Let them be 13 years in diapers. And they're like, what? I'm like, of course they're not going to be 13. Like, we're going to get it at some point. So I like to kind of take over other elements to life that people have
Mhm.
experiences with, no problem. And they're like, ah, you missed your brushing your teeth window. Forget it. Let the rest of the day. Just like, who cares? Tomorrow, try again tomorrow, brushing
We'll
your
never
teeth.
brush them again, you know?
Yeah, don't worry about that. So, like, I try to get silly in
Yeah,
certain ways and kind of call them out a little bit on that to help support them being like, this is no big deal, right? We really try to err on the side of this is not a big deal. Your health is a big deal, but how we approach it, if you're trying and put effort into it, it really isn't that serious because you're paying attention, which is the whole point.
yeah. Yeah, creating some perspective. Sometimes we are, as we all know, we are our own worst critics. We are the hardest on ourselves, and it's nice to have someone else kind of bring some humor to it. I love that, giving the education, creating some perspective of it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. You
And
had
we
a bad
learn through play, right? Like kids learn through play. Adults are not that much different in terms of just neuroscience, just like retaining information. So I like to
Mhm.
kind of pull that in just to help support, lighten it, right? It feels less pressure. They feel less shame and guilt. And also,
Absolutely.
it does create, to your point, that perspective piece.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Well, so kind of to wrap things up, what is something that you tell your clients or that you would tell or share with our listeners, something that for someone who's afraid to get started or afraid that they won't be able to stick with it, what's something that you would share with them or tell them?
Oh, I
I
think I
know.
would say I think there's a lot, but I think if there's one thing, I would say pay attention to your own context. No one else's version, no one else's pace, no one else's history or background or resources or education. We're all coming from different situations, and the only one that matters is your own. So when you're comparing yourself to yourself as a way of getting better, that's always going to serve you than looking at other people's cups and seeing what's in theirs.
Mhm. No, so, so true. And I think a lot of times when we start this journey, it's scary. And we usually ask clients, they're doing things they've never done before. Say like, hey, we need to actually eat a little bit more right now. And in their head, their whole life, they have been told that's not good. We're not going to do that. So a lot of it is just, hey, we're trusting the coach on this path because me and Kira have both walked this path. I think our experience in sharing that has been so incredibly helpful. Like Kira's social media is just shows this human side of her all the time. And people relate to that because I think as coaches, people think, oh, we don't have bad days. We just track. We're perfect little macro robots. We do all the things. But it's nice to just show your clients and everyone around you, like, hey, I'm still human in this too. But this is what I do on my bad days.
I would also
Abs-
say real quickly, I just thought about this one to Megan's point. I'm so sorry.
No,
I think
please.
it's I'm like, I have to say this one. I think it's I tell clients very first call to expect to fail. Failing forward, right? So don't expect, especially if you're nervous, to Megan's point, you're starting something new. You're not going to know how to do something, and you shouldn't expect yourself to know how to do something you're new at. So allowing yourself to learn and get it wrong, right? I saw something the other day. It was like if you were 30 failures away from your goal, how fast would you fail?
Mhm.
So allowing yourself to really kind of create experience, have
Yeah.
those human moments to Megan's point, I think is a big one too.
Absolutely. And as you guys are sharing and talking about these things, obviously you're focusing on health and that journey. But I'm sitting here thinking about all the correlations that the things that you're sharing about how they apply not just to our health journey, but also to a business journey. So I feel like rather you are here listening as, a brand new, just getting started on your health journey and thinking about the business, or you're a leader thinking about how do I help others on their business and or health journey. I think that there were so many really amazing tidbits that both of you shared with us today that could be applied to both when it comes to just staying motivated, trying to stay consistent. I call it zooming out, and then helping people zoom back in and bite off small pieces at a time and not getting so stuck on the big vision is too scary and the long game that feels too big. But helping people to really focus on today. And today didn't go great. Well, you know what? Tomorrow. Or I got a no today and I talked to someone and that was really scary and it didn't go very well. There's another person that you can talk to that it will go great. And I can try again another time, and that's okay. So thank you so much to both of you, Kara and Megan, for joining. Thank you for doing the weekly Active 90 calls. They have been so fantastic. And we're going to be so sad when the 90 days end and we don't get to hear from you each week again. But we're super grateful for all of your knowledge and for bringing it and sharing it with us and with all of LifeVantage. So thanks for joining me today. And we will hopefully talk to you soon. We'll see you next week on our Active 90 call. Thank you, Activation Nation, for joining us. And we will see you again next week. Thanks, Megan and Kara.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Activation Nation podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and updates, and share with a friend or prospect that you think could benefit from today's conversation. Check the episode description for any links or disclaimers, and we'll see you next week for another episode.